That day, my son wiped me off the face of the earth with one sentence. And I stopped keeping quiet. I spent my whole life building a home and a family. He didn't know what I had. One small thing my husband gave me before he died is all I need to get everything back. Sit back and I'll tell you my story from the beginning. Charlie always said I made the best coffee this side of the Mississippi. I never argued. After 54 years of marriage, I figured I'd earned the compliment and the title. That morning, I brewed a fresh pot of hazelnut roast, laid out a plate of shortbread cookies, the kind Tyler used to sneak by the handful when he was 9, and set everything on the old oak tray Charlie carved for me back when we still had calluses and big dreams. It was the first official estate meeting since Charlie passed. The first time all the paperwork and signatures and final wishes would be read aloud and sorted. I thought we'd gather in his study, maybe laugh about the notes Charlie left in the margins of legal documents. He was a margin doodler, loved drawing tiny boats. I thought we'd cry a little. I thought we'd be a family. Instead, I got blocked at the door. Tyler stood in the doorway like a bouncer at some exclusive lounge, all stiff shoulders and that forced half-smile he picked up after his third promotion. Behind him, I spotted Haley, his wife, sitting on the leather armchair that used to be Charlie's favorite spot. She was already flipping through folders like we were closing on a condo. "This is for family only, Mom. We'll debrief you later," Tyler said. Family only. First I chuckled. Thought he was making one of his dry jokes. He gets that from me, by the way. I mean, I birthed him. I'm his mother. If that's not family, then I must have misunderstood every holiday, every homemade costume, every late-night fever check and college care package. But Tyler didn't flinch. Just kept his hand on the door, barring me like I was the hired help and he was running a board meeting. I saw the lawyer, some young fellow in an ill-fitting suit, glance at me, then back at Tyler. Not a word. So I did what any self-respecting woman would do. I nodded, turned around, and walked back to the kitchen with my tray of cookies. I sat at the table alone, listening to the muffled voices behind that door. Every now and then I caught a phrase: assets, transfer, streamline. Haley's voice, always clipped and efficient. Tyler's tone, all polished and professional. Not a single pause to ask if I needed anything. Charlie's study, our study, suddenly felt like a foreign embassy. My name wasn't on the guest list. Now don't get me wrong. I wasn't looking for a crown or a throne. I didn't expect fanfare. But I did expect respect. I expected to be treated like the woman who kept this house running for over 5 decades, who stood beside Charlie through thick and thin. The woman who raised the man now locking me out. I stared down at my untouched coffee and thought about the brass key Charlie had handed me a few weeks before he passed. "Just in case," he said. At the time I thought it was sentimental. Now I wasn't so sure. That key was still in the drawer by the pantry, nestled next to the measuring spoons. I hadn't touched it. But something about the way Tyler shut that door, about the way he looked at me like a placeholder instead of a person, made me wonder what Charlie had known. And for the first time since the funeral, I felt something other than grief. I felt awake. "Only open the drawer if something feels off, Max," he said. I remember kissing him on the forehead and rolling my eyes. Charlie, what could be wrong? He just gave me that look. The one where his eyes crinkled, and I knew he was serious. He wasn't always a man of many words, but when he said something like that, it sat in my chest like a stone. Something did feel off. Everything felt off. The air, the house, my own footing. So after I finished my now cold coffee and put away the untouched cookies, I marched straight into the kitchen, opened the drawer and pulled out the key. The lock it fit wasn't dramatic. Just an old walnut cabinet in the back corner of Charlie's tool room. We always kept odds and ends in there. Warranties, extra chargers, a stack of holiday cards we couldn't bring ourselves to toss. But when I turned the key, I found something else entirely. Inside, lying right on top of a neatly folded dish towel, was a plain manila envelope, a USB drive, and a bright yellow sticky note. In Charlie's unmistakable scrawl, it said, "Call Grant Whitaker. He'll help." Now, Grant wasn't just any lawyer. He'd been Charlie's college roommate, one of those quiet types who didn't say much unless it mattered. Always wore charcoal suits and never showed up without a notepad. I hadn't seen him since our 40th anniversary dinner, when he gave us a bottle of wine I couldn't pronounce and Charlie made fun of for being fermented in a shoe. I picked up the USB, squinting at it like it might give me a clue. It was just a regular little thing. No label. No writing. I placed it gently back in the envelope and sat down at the kitchen table. Now, I'm not a tech whiz. I still think cloud storage sounds like witchcraft. But I am a woman with instincts, and every one of them was buzzing like a kettle at full boil. Tyler had changed. Not all at once, more like a slow fade, the kind you don't notice until the picture's barely recognizable. He used to call me 3 times a week. Then once. Then not at all unless something needed signing. He used to hug like he meant it. Now it's a one-arm pat while checking his watch. And Haley? That girl walked through life like it was a spreadsheet. Everything had a tab, a schedule, a contingency plan. She even sent me an itinerary for Thanksgiving last year. Said, "Please arrive by 3:15 to ensure optimal carving temperature." I wish I were kidding. Sitting there with the manila envelope in my lap, I felt Charlie's presence as clear as the ticking of the kitchen clock. He'd seen something coming. Something I didn't want to see. Maybe something I refused to see. I didn't open the envelope yet. I just sat holding it like a relic, knowing my life was about to shift again. And this time I'd better be ready. It was a Tuesday. I was still in my slippers, wearing one of Charlie's old cardigans that I refused to part with. It's navy with suede patches on the elbows and smells faintly of cedar and aftershave. The doorbell rang just as I was pulling banana bread out of the oven. I opened the door and there they were. A young couple. Early 30s if I had to guess. The man had a neat haircut and the woman wore boots that cost more than my first car. She held a clipboard with color-coded tabs. He smiled like we were old friends. "Hi there. We're here for the open house." I blinked. "I'm sorry." They looked confused like I was the one in the wrong place. "This is 721 Magnolia Drive, right?" the woman asked, double-checking her phone. "Your son scheduled the showing for this morning. We figured we'd beat the rush." Now, I'm a woman of many talents, but hiding my emotions has never been one of them. My face must have told the whole story because their smiles faded quick. "There's no open house," I said as evenly as I could. "Oh well, that's strange," the man muttered, tilting his phone toward me like that would clarify anything. Sure enough, there it was. A listing. My living room. My kitchen. Even the throw pillows I had just fluffed that morning. I could see my favorite Afghan draped over the back of the couch, the one my sister-in-law crocheted in '84. I thanked them because manners don't vanish just because your world's imploding, and gently closed the door. Then I slid down to the floor right there in the entryway. Back against the coat closet, banana bread still warm on the counter. My son had listed my house. My house. The one Charlie and I saved for, paid off, maintained, remodeled. The one where I brought Tyler home from the hospital, where we had birthday parties, Thanksgivings, and too many game nights to count. Listed. For sale. Without telling me. While I was still living in it. My first thought? Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe Haley hit the wrong button on some home finance app. Maybe Tyler got mixed up with the address. But deep down I knew better. I stayed there on the floor for what felt like hours, though it was probably 10 minutes. My knees reminded me soon enough that I'm not 30 anymore. I finally got up, poured myself a cup of tea, and stood at the kitchen window staring out at the backyard. Our backyard, trying to steady my breath. The grass looked just as it always had. The wind chimes Charlie hung from the oak tree were tinkling softly. The world didn't look any different, but it had shifted. That much I knew. I don't remember finishing the tea, but I remember standing there, one hand on the sink, the other clutching the countertop like it might steady me from tipping over entirely. It wasn't just betrayal I felt. It was erasure. Like someone had decided I was just a placeholder in my own life. A box to check off. But that brass key was still on the table. And I hadn't even opened that envelope yet. I didn't get much rest that night. Not that I expected to, mind you. My mind was spinning like the old ceiling fan in Charlie's workshop. Loud, rickety, and impossible to shut off once it got going. Around midnight, I shuffled into the den, wrapped in my flannel robe and Charlie's cardigan, and sat at the computer. That thing still runs on updates it probably doesn't need, but it eventually booted up. I typed our address into the browser, fingers trembling just a bit, and there it was. A full real estate listing. Glossy, polished, professional. The one I saw on the phone of the couple who came earlier, but at that time I couldn't look closely and see the details. Now I had time to analyze everything thoroughly. I couldn't believe my eyes. Photos of my home, taken without my knowledge, now floating on the internet like we were hosting an open invitation to memory theft. There was the hallway mirror Charlie hung crooked but insisted was artfully slanted. My floral bedspread tucked so neatly I knew someone else had done it. My pantry shelves lined with mason jars of lentils and rice. Even my laundry room. For heaven's sake, they photographed my socks. The description read like something out of Better Homes and Gardens. Charming single-owner home on a quiet street. Well-maintained. Move-in ready. And there, under the ownership details clear as day, Tyler Reynolds. Not Margaret. Not Charlie. Just Tyler. I sat back, stunned. I scrolled and scrolled, staring at every piece of my life turned into a bullet point. Not a single mention of me. Not even a polite, currently occupied. Just sterile real estate fluff, designed to make strangers imagine themselves living in a space that hadn't even let me say goodbye. I should have been heartbroken, but instead I got angry. Real angry. I marched back to the kitchen and yanked open the drawer where I'd left the manila envelope. I took a deep breath, pulled out the USB drive, and slid it into the laptop. The file popped up automatically, Charlie's video. There he was. My Charlie, thinner and paler than I remembered, but eyes just as sharp as they'd ever been. He was sitting in the study, that same leather chair Tyler had blocked me from, wearing his plaid flannel and a determined expression. Sunshine, he said, his name for me. If you're watching this, then I'm gone and something's happened. I grabbed a tissue before the tears even started. He always knew when I'd need one. They're not trying to care for you, he said, voice cracking just a little. They're trying to remove you. Quietly. Gently. Legally. But it's removal all the same. He paused, collected himself. I've documented everything. You'll find it all with Grant Whitaker. You remember him. First row at our wedding, still wears those awful bow ties. He knows what to do. But you, Margaret, you have to stand firm. Don't let them make you feel small. You're the whole damn house. Well, that did it. I cried until my cheeks hurt. Then I wiped my face, stood up straight, and made a cup of tea because frankly I needed something warm to hold. The next morning I got up before the birds. Put on my good blouse and a string of pearls Charlie bought me after Tyler was born. I called Grant's office before breakfast. Grant Whitaker's office, the assistant chirped. Tell him Margaret Reynolds is calling. He'll know why. And wouldn't you know, he did. Sunday arrived gray and drizzly, which felt just about right. I've always believed the sky knows how to set a mood. Tyler and Haley had invited me to their house. Just a quick chat, Haley said on the phone, in that syrupy voice of hers that always made me feel like I was being offered a brochure instead of an invitation. When I walked in, it felt less like a family meeting and more like a startup pitch. They had their laptops out, legal pads open, spreadsheets printed in color. There was even a little plate of grapes and cheese cubes like we were about to launch into a TED Talk about my future. Tyler pulled out a chair for me, gesturing like a maitre d' at a trendy brunch spot. I took my seat, placed my tote on the floor, and folded my hands in my lap. I smiled politely. That's what Southern women do. We smile politely before we turn the world on its head. Mom, Tyler began, clearing his throat. We've been talking with a really wonderful advisor. Someone who specializes in transitions, yours specifically. Haley jumped in, practically glowing. There's this beautiful senior community just outside town. Patio access, a communal library, daily yoga. Margaret, you'll love it. It's very... you. I tilted my head. How nice, I said, which, if you know me, means I'm about 1 second from flipping a table. They slid a brochure across the table. Full-color photos of grinning retirees holding gardening tools and cups of herbal tea. I didn't touch it. Instead, I reached into my tote bag and pulled out my navy folder. Quietly, gently, like I was taking out a casserole recipe, not an emotional grenade. What's that? Haley asked, her voice losing a bit of that sparkle. Something I brought for our little chat, I said. I opened the folder and placed a document right in front of Tyler. His eyes narrowed. What is this? It's your father's updated will, I said. Signed, witnessed, and notarized. 6 months before he passed. Haley's hand hovered over her laptop like she was trying to find the eject button. Tyler scanned the document quickly. lips pressing into a thin line. "I think there's been a mistake," he said, his voice tight. "We already reviewed the estate documents." "You reviewed the version you had," I said. "This is the real one." He stared at me. I stared back. "And everything goes to you?" Haley said, voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. "Everything." The room was quiet, except for the faint humming of Tyler's laptop and the dull thud of realization settling on the table. Then Tyler reached for another paper in my folder. His face changed the second he saw it. Loan documents. Multiple. All forged in my name. "Mom," he said, suddenly defensive. "We signed those together. During Dad's treatment. Don't you remember?" I leaned back in my chair. "I remember everything. And so does the bank. They've already flagged the signatures." Haley's mouth opened, then shut. She looked pale. Not a flattering shade on her, if I'm being honest. "I brought everything to Grant," I continued. "He's handling it now. Probate, fraud, the lot." Tyler tried again. "You're confused. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I said, calm as ever. "I understand that you tried to erase me, but I've got the original draft of this story, and I'm still writing it." They didn't say much after that. Just stared at each other like two kids caught sneaking cookies they didn't even want. I stood, gathered my folder, and said, "Now if you'll excuse me, I have banana bread in the oven." And I left. The next morning, I brewed a strong pot of coffee and called Joe's locksmith. Joe's been working in our town for so long. He probably has keys to Noah's, Arkansas. He arrived in 20 minutes flat, a jingle of tools and a cheerful "Mornin', Miss Maggie." Like we were about to swap cobbler recipes instead of secure my future. By noon, every lock was changed. Front, back, even the little one on the garage that hadn't worked properly since Clinton was in office. I stood behind him with a clipboard, Haley style, checking each one off with more satisfaction. I didn't stop there. I went through every calendar entry and appointment Tyler had set up, insurance calls, appraisal visits, legal consultations, and canceled them all. Next, I called the utility companies. All of them. "Yes, I'd like to remove a secondary user from my account," I told them sweetly. "Yes, I'm aware he's my son. And yes, I'm very aware he's no longer welcome to manage my water bill." Click, click, done. Then came the binders. Oh, the binders. Haley had left behind an entire stack of pastel-colored, tab-labeled monstrosities. Transition planning, long-term budget, decluttering for dignity. I swear one of them was titled Margaret's Exit Strategy. I stared at them for a solid 10 minutes before deciding that I didn't need a transition. I needed shelf space. I boxed them up, dropped them off at the local library's donation bin, and didn't even flinch when the volunteer asked if I was downsizing. "Nope," I said with a smile. "Just decluttering the drama." With the house feeling lighter already, I turned to the guest bedroom. Once reserved for Tyler and Haley's visits, complete with matching towels and a framed quote that said, "Family is everything." Oh, the irony. I repainted the walls a soft sage green. Something peaceful. Something mine. I moved Charlie's recliner into that room, right by the window overlooking the garden. Every evening, I'd sit there with a cup of tea, watching the birds fuss around the feeder he installed years ago. He always said cardinals were nature's gossipers, the way they chirped and flitted about. I like to think they're still keeping me informed. I even joined a pottery class down at the community center, Tuesdays at 10. Turns out, I'm terrible at symmetry but excellent at carving sarcastic phrases into my bowls. My latest creation says, "Not your retirement plan," right across the rim. I cleared out some photos too. Not out of bitterness, well, maybe a pinch, but because it was time to make room for something new. I boxed up most of the family portraits and tucked them away. Except one. It's Tyler, age 5. His birthday party. He's wearing a paper hat and has blue frosting on his nose. He's laughing, eyes bright, cheeks flushed from excitement. Before the spreadsheets. Before the strategy. I framed it and placed it on the mantel. Not as a reminder of who he is now, but of who he used to be. And maybe, just maybe, who he could be again someday. But I wasn't waiting on it. It was a Thursday morning, just after I'd finished pruning the rosemary. I'd taken to gardening like it was my second job, digging, trimming, planting. And I'll be honest, those tomatoes don't give me attitude. The mail had arrived with its usual mix of catalogs, bills, and once again an offer for a mobility scooter I don't need yet. But tucked between an issue of Better Homes and a newsletter from my church was an envelope. No return address, just my name in handwriting I would have recognized anywhere. Tyler had always looped his Ys just like his father. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single card. No glitter, no kittens, no fancy gold edging. Just a plain white card and one line. If you're open to it, I'd like to talk. That was it. Not a word more. No mom, no sorry. No explanation. It was the kind of note you send when you want to crack a window open but can't quite bring yourself to knock on the door. I stared at that sentence like it might grow some context if I blinked hard enough. It didn't. I set it on the counter, made myself a cup of peppermint tea, and sat on the porch swing, letting the breeze sort through my thoughts. And wouldn't you know it, the phone rang. Caller ID Tyler. I stared at it until the third ring, then picked up with a cautious, "Hello." He didn't waste time. "Hi, Mom. I hope this is okay. I wanted to say something." I stayed quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty but full. Waiting. He took a breath. "I've started therapy," he said, his voice low and careful. "And Haley and I were taking some space. I've been thinking a lot about everything. About you. About Dad. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know." I watched a bird land on the railing, head twitching side to side like it was eavesdropping. Maybe it was. I let a few seconds pass. Not to be dramatic, just to make sure he really meant it. "Well," I said, "if you want to talk to me, it has to be about now. Not then. Not what you did. Not what you planned. Just who you are now, and whether that version of you wants to know who I am now, too." There was a pause. Not heavy, just thoughtful. "I'd like that," he said finally. "I'd really like that." We didn't say much after that. A few polite questions about the weather, a mention of his office downsizing, and some awkward "well, I should get going" small talk. And then we hung up. No fireworks. No apologies that tied things up in a neat little bow. But also no lies. No manipulation. No pitch deck or retirement facility brochures. Just two people standing at the very edge of something maybe worth rebuilding. I sat on the porch for a long while after that, sipping my tea until it went cold. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just felt still. And for the first time in a long time, that stillness didn't feel like erasure. Felt like room. Room for boundaries. Room for healing. Maybe, just maybe, room for one more story with a different ending. I finally unlocked the door to Charlie's old study and breathed in that familiar scent. Cedar, pipe tobacco, faint whiff of his old aftershave. It felt like stepping into a time capsule. Only now it wasn't dusty nostalgia I was after. It was a fresh start. I shuffled in a battered upright piano I found at a consignment shop down the road. Satin black, slightly out of tune but full of character, just like me. I brushed off years of silence and sat down. My fingers hesitated at first, then found the keys. Surprise, 40 years away, and they remembered more than I expected. I started tinkering with little melodies. I didn't have grand designs on composing a symphony or anything award-worthy. These were whimsical tunes for me. Late morning reflections, thunderstorms on my porch swing, Charlie's laugh echoing down the hall. I christened one The Eternal Silence. It noodled through gentle chords and soft pauses, like the space that held me when they tried turning me invisible. It wasn't about revenge. It was about revelation, showing myself I still existed. Each evening as the sun dipped behind the garden, I'd light a low lamp and play my small compositions. Neighbors passing by might have heard a tentative tune at first. Now they hear purpose. I'm not sure they know what it means, but they notice that something's different, and I'm okay with that. I didn't move back into the den. This new music room became mine. A space where I could let go of the past and write my own song. I hung a watercolor painting of a cardinal on the wall, the one Charlie snapped at the bird feeder last spring. Tyler calls now every few weeks. He always starts with the weather, mentions his work. I answer softly, giving a little update on my pottery class or my latest melody. And yes, he hears the quiet room playing softly in the background sometimes. I keep the conversation easy, pleasant, firm. He's rediscovering who I am, and I'm okay giving him space to do that on my terms. I don't carry bitterness around like a handbag. I'd rather carry a melody. A photo of young Tyler in his paper birthday hat sits on the piano. I smile at it and think, that boy used to believe in magic. Maybe he still can. But whatever happens, I won't lose myself again. To anyone reading this who's ever felt like someone tried to write you out of your story, don't wait for them to notice the missing pages. Don't wait for them to realize you're gone. Get back into the story. Rediscover your rhythm. Play your music. Above all, remember to take care of yourself.
Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever felt erased or underestimated by your own family? How did you handle it? If you liked the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.